I'm very
And
new
also,
to this thing.
look, before we record, or you can record, but I don't know if you're able to edit it out. I wanted to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right because
Oh
I
yeah,
read
so I'm also okay. So for me,
it.
I'm super into just like yeah. Okay, I was gonna go all the way there. Don't worry, I don't have to be. This doesn't have to be like a formal like welcome to my show. Like, yeah, I wanted to say to you that. Okay, so I always forget. I'm always so anxious about pronouncing other people's names properly that I forget that I also have a hard name. So my name is Raffela.
Raffela. Okay,
Raffela.
Raffela.
Yeah, you
I
got it.
love it.
So is it Adrienne? How do I say
That's it.
yours?
Nope, that's it. Adrienne. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I didn't know if it was
Raffela.
maybe like Adrienne or I just Adrienne. Okay, and I use she, her pronouns. What pronouns should we use for
Yeah,
you?
she, her.
Okay,
She, her.
great,
Yeah.
cool, cool. I'm
Same for
into
you?
it.
Or
Yeah,
what are your pronouns?
yeah, she, her.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. We're good. Yay! So, okay, so can you give me like a little, like, do you have like a title or like what would you, do you have something you'd call yourself? I get asked that and I'm like,
Yeah.
ah.
I honestly, right now, I would say probably content creator. I mean, yes, I like to be creative in general. So I'm diving into various little things, but I think the consistent thing, especially on here, is content creator. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Maybe in the future, writer or speaker, stuff like that. But I'm just kind of warming up to this whole space. So I'm keeping it
No,
simple.
I really relate to that. My whole life, I've always just said like, oh, I'm a student, I'm a student. And now it's been this time where I've finally been like, oh, like that's not my main identity anymore. Is that I'm just a student. It's like now I'm like an activist and I'm someone who, yells on the internet. Like I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think in this time all those labels are kind of melding in this way. Like you can be this activist, you can be this artist, you can be all these things. It just kind of comes down to this like message that you want to share and give to the world and have that conversation around. So it really is kind of like there are so many labels you could put yourself in, but I try to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, and you're so right. Like, there's also so many labels that we fit, and we don't really need to limit ourselves to just one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, as you said, like maybe like a writer or a speaker, and like I don't know. Like people ask me even like what do you like? What's next? Where do you want to move? Like, where do you want to go with this? I'm like, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
even know what I'm eating tonight for supper. Never mind like what's happening in the future.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to like reduce you to like what is your title or like
Yeah.
something like that, but it's good to know that you are like you enjoy being in this creative space and like sharing information and content, and I just love it. I actually don't know how I even found your profile. I've been thinking like maybe someone recommended it to me or I like stumbled upon, but I've
Yeah.
loved following along with you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm I would like to give you space to be heard instead of, the feeling of screaming into the abyss and you have something to say and no one's listening, or you don't have the ability to
Mhm.
be heard on the internet because the internet's just a chaotic place that only listens to thin white women.
It's very noisy. It's very like perfect word chaotic. Like and the way that people are connecting has this layer of like how the platform wants you to communicate too. So it's like
100%.
actually trying to find your people and like communicate and build community around that. It's you got to have a level of creative and resourcefulness just with that. So I actually always ask people when I connect with them, like, wait, how did you find me? How did we like connect up? Because again, especially my main platform right now is Instagram. That's where I'm seeing like a lot of the community start to build. But like, I also like interested in YouTube, interested in TikTok, and seeing how I can connect with people in that way. But like, it's so hard trying to figure out how do you find your people, and then when you find them, how do you bring value? How do you, I always find that like one of the things that's always in the back of my mind, like how can I bring value from a place of like, I'm not telling you how to live or how you should live, but I'm coming more as like, hey, can I be your BFF on the internet? Can I be that encourager for you as you're going on your journey? And so, yeah, this has just been like a whole learning process in itself. And then when you start adding in the subject that we're tapping into, which is activism, but also for like fat bodies, and how that subject for me is kind of like nobody really wants to talk about it unless you're fat, and if you're don't have that like real life experience of it, you're kind of like, oh, woo woo woo, or you're the opposite of like a complete douchebag or hater, And so it's like it's very hard to bring people together around this topic too, and have honest conversations that don't just end up people feeling hurt or people feeling like, no, I have to push back on what you're saying, So
Yeah, you're so right. Like, I feel like people, like, yeah, if you're not living in a fat body or you don't identify as fat, you're right. There is that resistance of either like you with the fat phobia, or like, like, oh, you're such an inspiration, you're so brave, but still like they're unwilling to confront their own fat phobia, like with themselves. And I think that's a really good point, that the people that are talking and listening are mostly fat people, and we need to have more people in the conversation or just listening and being like, oh, this is really important. We need to treat people with respect. So yeah, I would love to learn more about your own journey. Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, go ahead. I'm just like flowing with you, but like, what does that look like? What does respect look like for a fat person, and like for myself, like, what does that look like? And that's part of kind of where my content is. I really zone in on like, yes, there's the activism as like we should do as community, but I feel like my piece that I feel like I'm trying to give, that's that extra value and that I haven't really seen yet in this particular fat liberation space, is the self-care, your own personal understanding, building, creating of self-care, and being able to do that with yourself and unlearn a lot of that own fat phobia you have and how it shows up for you, and then be able to go out into the world and show up as your best self currently in your fat body, right? Because the message is for fat people, for at least from my perspective as a fat woman, you can't show up as your best self until you become an acceptable size. So all that extra stuff that you're doing, putting on makeup, maybe putting on an outfit, trying to be cute, that don't even matter until you show up as a certain size that's acceptable. And that's where I feel like my pushback is starting to be. It's like, no, self-care, establishing your self-worth, establishing your value is not contingent upon you being at an acceptable size. It can be a part of your journey, right? Because we have a lot of people doing that in this space as well that are taking that journey of, changing their size. And that's just part of what their journey is. I don't push back against that either, but I also am not going to push back against the person that's saying, I want to experience my best self, and knowing I love myself and knowing that I can be my best self today at this size, not, oh, one day down the road when, I finally achieve that number on the scale kind of thing. So the self-care piece is kind of where I feel like I really want to kind of speak on more and more,
I think that's so major, and honestly, that's something I don't hear being like talked about that often. Like what you just said, it's something I felt for a very, very long time before I even knew what I was feeling, but I haven't heard people talk about it. So like the thing of, oh, like what's the point of putting on makeup? I'm still fat. You know, I've had that experience my whole life. Like, I remember as a kid, like, okay, I got a haircut. It doesn't matter, I'm still fat. Like, I'm still not, like, nothing I do matters because the main problem is still here. And
Mhm.
I think that's I don't know, like, do other people experience that too and we just don't talk about it? But I think that is such a major piece
Yeah.
that isn't being handled, because you're right. Like, if right now I view myself as temporary, like this body as just temporary, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not gonna get the nice clothes, or I'm not gonna take care of this body now because
Mhm.
I just have to wait until things are perfect or things are
Yeah.
better or I'm acceptable,
Yeah.
then we're not living. We're just in like this temporary state of like waiting to live. And
Oh,
I've spent too much time there, and I am so, like, I could like cry right now. I am so tired of living in that like in that temporary gap of like
mhm.
waiting for my life to begin.
Yes.
And so are you at a place now where you're like, this is my life, it has begun, or are you still in that transition, like still learning to accept yourself and take care of yourself just the way you are?
Oh yeah, always learning. I don't think there's ever perfection. There's ever a point of like it stops. It's literally a journey, and you're going deeper and deeper in understanding, and it's more like you're just learning to accept more and more. And again, you're also accepting the change that happens as you're learning down that journey more and more, right? So like the idea that like my body will ultimately change. I'm going to get older. You know, like there are things that's going to happen to me where my body's changed. So it's not like it's like I could just stop time and stop everything from changing and then somehow become my perfect like acceptance and it's all perfect. Like that is not a goal that can ever be achieved.
Oh
And there,
no.
and I don't know if you did this. I don't know if you've thought about this, but like I honestly feel like a lot of that is in our community. Like we're supposed to have that as a goal. Like there, if we
Yes.
get to this perfect place, then everything will be. And it's like that is not human. That is not a human like experience.
Nope.
So where did we get that? You know?
Oh, I want to say
Yeah.
capitalism, right? Like, like, here, let me sell you this cream so that you look young. Let me sell you this weight loss program so that you look this way. Like, if we all were just like okay with ourselves, so
Hmm.
many people would lose money. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm happy for. Like, I mean, you know, those people can lose the money. But what
Yeah.
you just said about like, oh, our bodies are literally always changing. And because I think I'm still stuck on the idea of perfection. Like, when am I gonna be okay? When am
Yeah.
I gonna stop like hating these parts of myself, or like worrying about these things? But you're right. It's like, if it's not this body today, maybe it's after I pop out a baby or like get older, or, you know, like I'm in recovery, not in recovery, but working towards recovery of an eating disorder. So that's gonna change my body too. And I guess we just don't know what's what's happening to us, or what we can expect in the future that will impact ourselves and our bodies. So you're right. I
Mhm.
think it's like, okay, if our like acceptance of ourselves is contingent on one ideal, like
Mhm.
we're never gonna get there.
Yeah, it's going to be like this endless thing that you're going after. Even if think about it, if your only intention and focus is on this outward thing that could happen in the future, then you're never going to experience the joy and the moments you're in right now. You won't even be paying attention to it. And so, even in that way, your life doesn't have the fullness that it could have when you just literally stop and pause and show gratitude and be grateful for just where you are right now. Like you made it to this day. There are people in the world that did not make it to this day. You know, you have things about you that no one else has. That there are things about you that you could just celebrate. And so I think the journey of acceptance is part of that too, kind of letting go of this idea that like this future self is somehow better than what you are right now, what you're moving towards right now, you know? So yeah, for me, like I'm actually still coming to terms with that idea. I'm still like mourning that idea that like there's not going to be a perfect me, you know, ever. Even if I were to like lose a whole bunch of weight, there's still going to be a whole bunch of messed up stuff with me because that's the human experience. But that's okay. That is okay.
I love that you say about grieving or mourning that idea, because our whole lives we've been told like, oh, you're going to be happier when you look like this, when you achieve
Yeah.
this, everything's going to be okay at this point. And so maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's been like a little bit of hope we've been holding on to, like, oh, I'm not happy now, but happiness will come.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a really important piece, like giving ourselves some space to grieve that loss, saying, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there is no dangling hope of, you know, happiness or perfection that comes with a certain body type or appearance or a place in our lives. And instead look for that happiness or joy like from within, because we know that it's not going to come from anywhere else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it will never come outside of you. I mean, one of the last videos I done on IG was I saw this woman that was talking about she had a fear and she was terrified of being alone, you know, and never being able to receive love. And one of my like comments was that is that the love within attracts the love without, right? So if you don't have that kind of growing sense of love within, and that comes from again paying attention to your experience where you are right now, doing the self-care to celebrate and acknowledge that experience, nurturing your past trauma and stuff that maybe you've gone through, and nurturing yourself and saying, yo, I've made it to this point, even though I experienced that, like doing those kind of taking care of yourself kind of things, then you're never going to experience that love. And then you're always going to be looking for that validation, that kind of validation on the outside, which will never make you feel whole. It never will make you feel, you know, it just won't make you feel good, you know? So yeah, I feel like I'm going on a rant with this.
No, but it's good. It's a good rant. I think it's something that we need to talk about and acknowledge. And okay, so like within the self-care piece, like we've talked about, you know, maybe why it's needed and like the place it has in our lives. So let's say if someone's like accepting that, like, okay, I'm willing to go on this journey of acceptance of like wherever I am, wherever changes may happen. Do you have any advice on like what that self-care looks like? And I'm assuming it's going to be so different for every person, but like self-care, I feel like it's such a broad category in general. Some people think it's bubble baths and face masks. Some people think it's going to therapy. Some people it's taking a nap or feeding themselves. And I think all of those are right answers. But like in this space, do you have anything specifically that you like to like try to share with people, or things that you do for yourself?
Yeah, I don't think that, like, I agree. I think it's going to be different for everyone. I believe that one of the key pieces, though, is a lot of introspection. So being able to literally spend alone time with yourself and check in with how you're feeling about things. And like it, for me, it showed up with, when I started my Instagram in 2019, I was at a place of loss. I was working as an activist in my community, and in my community there, it has a lot of white people here, bluntly. And so, and a lot of the work we were doing was around racial justice, human justice, and stuff like that. And actually, I think this was like 2016, 2017, but this was actually right around the first time Trump was, you know, and so it brought to the forefront a lot of the instilled racism and having to work to bring social justice forward in my city, when I realized that there was a lot of white people that just inherently had that stuff within them, and it was in the structural system of like what I was working with, it broke me. And these are like progressive white people. So it's different to say like, oh yeah, you know, the white person that, you know, Trump supporter, or they're already full of hate, whatever the case may be. But it's a whole nother thing to think that the people that you believe that are agreeing with you and are supporting you, they're the ones that's actually doing the most harm. And it literally broke me open to the point where I had to start checking myself. And so when that happened, it really kind of sent me into a little bit of a depression. It sent me into a little bit of like feeling lost. And one of the things that I did to start bringing myself back was practice self-care in the way of I picked up a camera and started doing self-portraits. And if you scroll on my Instagram, you'll see that like when I first started posting, it was mainly just solo portraits. So I would go out, take my camera, and I would be the photographer and I would be the model, and I'd try to figure out poses and share those online. And for me, what the internal process was, I was trying to sort through my internal feelings in a creative, artistic way, you know? And so it was nothing more than that at the beginning. It was just trying to creatively express who I thought I was in this creative way, and push back on what the world says I am, or what I should be, or how I should feel about myself. And then from there, I started diving into more journaling. I started doing a lot more mindful work where I would just get up and just really kind of notice my thoughts and monitor how my mood would relate to what I was really kind of thinking about or being anxious about, and just really start to separate my mood from my identity, right? So the idea that like you could have these really you could say some really crappy things about yourself, but that's not always true to who you actually are. And realizing that was another breakthrough I had, was that I could be saying things because that's just, you'll get those things from TV, from culture, from all these different things about who you are, and it literally will sound like your voice in your head, but it's not you, you know? It's not you. And separating those two things is kind of like where the next level of self-care has been for me, going more into like a mindfulness place, an introspection kind of space. And so I think it does show up differently for everyone when it comes to self-care. But I think a core piece to it is creating the space for yourself to explore what's going on inside, and then being able to come to terms with that and accept what that is, let go of what no longer is useful, and then also grow the things that you want more of, as far as feeling, mood, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Wow, that's so much and so good. And I think that will make a lot of people really uncomfortable. You know, we want like a quick fix. We're like, oh, can I just go drink some green juice and then feel better and everything's okay? But it's like, no, like we need to have that uncomfortable time of like, yeah, sitting with your thoughts and feelings. And I really like what you say, that like the voice in our head, or like what we're telling ourselves, like isn't our own voice, even if it sounds like us. I think that's really amazing. Like I notice when I'm feeling really anxious or overwhelmed, I'm feeling really down on myself, I'm like, oh my god, I can't do anything, I suck at literally everything, like I'm useless, I'm horrible. And if I'm talking to someone, they're like, don't say those things to yourself, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but like if I can like separate that and say, okay, like whose voice is that, Raffela? Like you saying, oh, you're useless, you can't do anything. It's like, oh, that's not my voice. I would never say that to someone. Like, why would I even put that on myself? Like, then it comes from that piece of trauma, right? Like, who in my childhood repeatedly told me those messages? Okay, and so I've like internalized them that I think it's my own voice. When you're right, it could be like the integration of like childhood traumas and societal expectations of like, you need to produce more, you need to do more, you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Seeing, going on Instagram and everyone's posting all the amazing things they're doing, but we're not posting our failures, our freakouts, our weak moments. So then I'm comparing my whole self to just like the highlights of other people, which I think comparison's horrible and I'm really trying to work on it.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, we're integrating all of that information into our self-talk, into how we like, I guess, ultimately view ourselves. But
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting thing that I'm going to myself sit with and hopefully try to catch myself if I'm having those like negative self-talk or those, yeah, just those thoughts about myself. Like, okay, Raffela, is this really what you feel? Is this actually you? Or is it A, B, and C? And maybe by like externalizing those voices, we can recognize, oh, I'm not a piece of shit. It's this person that told me this, or I saw this that's telling me that I'm not good enough until I buy their product. I think that is so, so important. And I just think that so many people will have such a resistance to it because it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable to dig deep into ourselves and unpack all of that. And even for myself, sometimes without even realizing it, I'll be scrolling on my phone for hours and hours and hours, not doing anything, but just I'm so afraid to be alone with my thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And it's like I like being physically alone, but I'm always on my computer, on my phone, watching TV, have a million things distracting me because if I'm alone, then I have to face that sadness, that anxiety, that like low self-esteem that I'm trying to like really suppress. I'm like, no, it's fine, everything's fine. So
But that, see, right there, and I feel the same way. Right there, that not facing those emotions, not allowing them to process through. If we look at, nature has rhythm to it, right? There's day, there's night, right? There's good and there's bad emotions. It's gonna be that. And that is the human experience. And when you allow yourself to take time to just process through those emotions, it could be on a very, very slow. You want to be gentle, you want to be kind to yourself. This is not about productivity, even though that's what our society runs off of, is you gotta be productive. You gotta, there's a time and a place to make things happen. This journey that you're on to accept yourself, to connect to yourself, to celebrate who you are, has nothing to do with being proactive or productive with it. It is about being willing to take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, and see where that unfolds for you. So processing your emotions, processing how you feel. And I love how you said that, like, you almost confronting yourself about the thoughts that you're having. Yes, that is like the number one key. When you confront yourself on how you're feeling, why you're saying those things, like, question, why are you saying those things? Where could that come from? Why are you feeling? Is it attached to something that you need, that you may be neglecting yourself? Whatever the case may be, exploring what that is, that allows you, once you get to the other side of that exploration, you'll look back and be like, I got through that. Wow. And that instills such a sense of confidence, such a sense of like knowing that you have the strength to do it again and do it again. And that's how you start to build that growth, or that worth, that sense of like acceptance of like, wow, I am powerful. Look what I was able to do, you know? And so I know I so agree with you when you say that, like, most people won't want to take those steps. And that's what I said. That's the very key. do what not everyone else is doing if you really want that sense of acceptance for who you are, where you are right now. You know, don't listen to what, you know, everyone else is saying about, oh, do things on the outside of yourself, get pretty, whatever the case may be. Those things are important, but also add in that piece of processing your emotions, connecting with yourself, being gentle with yourself, and giving yourself the time to do it. And don't give yourself a timeline to do it, but be consistent about doing it. You know, bottom line, just do it. Just do it. You know, that was correct with that one. Just do it.
I think that is so important. Like, even for me, I struggle with perfectionism a lot. So for me, like, I do look at like timelines and doing things perfectly, or like don't want to do them at all. And so I think that's a really important piece. It's not like, oh, wait until it's the right time, or wait until it feels perfect, or you feel ready, or you know, but just doing it, just getting started, and not thinking about a timeline of, okay, I need to learn acceptance and self-validation by like next year, I have to have it done. Like, that's what that's how my brain works. That's like the kind of pressure I put on myself. So I think
Yeah.
that's really valuable to say, you know, no timelines. Like, this isn't about working on a schedule. This is just letting ourselves do the work at the pace that feels right for us, I guess. And okay, I
And
have a
it's easy
question.
to do. It's actually it's easy to incorporate into where you are. So this doesn't look like, oh, well, how do I block out 3 hours of my time every day to do these things? For me, some days, this morning, you know, one of the things I do right now that's like, and this is always changing with my morning and my nighttime routine. Those are kind of the two main times that I try to practice a lot of this self-care for myself, is intertwined with like my morning and my nighttime routine. But like this, one of the things that I did for my nighttime routine is I've started listening to like affirmations at night around self-worth, and I'll let it play in the background while I'm asleep. Well, then like this night, this is kind of like, I woke up and there was like a very kind of heaviness that I was feeling. And I literally got out of bed and just started writing down all the thoughts that were like coming up for me right now. And there were some pretty like negative thoughts, and I don't know where it was coming from, whatever the case may be, bad dream, I don't know, but it was definitely there, and it was like physically showing up as this heaviness. And so I wrote those down for a moment, and then I sat with that. I did some breath work. And then within 5 minutes, I was back in bed and went back to sleep. And then when I woke up to officially start my day, I felt lighter. So again, it was just taking the moment to address what your body is trying to tell you, acknowledge it for what it is, and then let it go. Because again, those thoughts, they're thoughts. They're not part of my identity. They're just stuff that's passing in and out of me, because that's who we are as human beings. We're, you know, energetic, and all those things we can receive, and all that kind of stuff. And so those thoughts are those thoughts. I let them pass through, and then I go on about my day, right? And you'll find that if you're doing this on a consistent enough basis, it's almost like a clearing out, right? You'll find that like it won't happen so often, because you're taking the time to address what your body is telling you it needs. And that really is for self-care. And that, again, that was just 5 minutes of my time. So again, it's crafting what you need for you, and the way that you need it for you is really important. Yeah.
I really like that and that example. And like, I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, instead of, you know, rushing to my phone to always distract myself as soon as I wake up, being like, okay, how am I feeling? What am I feeling? Like, what's going on with me? And I probably avoid it because it's uncomfortable, right? It is uncomfortable to sit and face that, but maybe with some practice, it might feel like less uncomfortable. And like what you said, like once you're getting some of it out, then it might not be as frequent if there's like less trapped inside of you and stuff that you just haven't been dealing with for so long. Okay, so with that, I'm curious. So how do you feel about yourself after like working through this practice and on this journey? Like it makes me feel like you're like creating like a strong sense of self and who you are and validating yourself. So if you have that and are working on that, what about external things? Like if people say something negative to you or like comment on you or your body, does that affect you? Are you able to like push it back or keep it at a distance? Like I think about that because I have a really hard time with what my family thinks of me, like whether it's what I'm doing, like if I'm producing enough, how I'm doing in school, what am I doing for work, or my physical appearance. That's something I have a really hard time of letting go of. So it's like, okay, if I can work on building up myself, like will those have less of an impact on me? Like what's been your experience?
I think it definitely changes with who the person is relationally to you. Like I know family know how to hit those points.
Yep. They
Family
do.
hit those points. They know exactly what to do and how to say to hit those points because they're family. You know, we've allowed them to be as close as possible that someone can be, you know, so, an outside person can be to us, you know. So I will say honestly, outside people, like everyday people, like our internet trolls that we all deal with. I mean, I'll tell you this, I have now, and again, I don't have that big a follower base, or I don't have that big numbers on Instagram, but I have a group of folks that have created a whole group, and all they do is they capture my videos and create memes around it. And they literally are constantly trying to get me to like talk to them, and they're pushing their agenda of like you're promoting obesity and all that kind of stuff. And
Classic.
it's like, yeah, classic trolling, right? And so that does not affect me at all, you know, because the one thing that I've been learning with this self-care is the reality that the validation of myself is much stronger than having outside people validate me. And so random people on the street, trolls on the internet, they can't give me the kind of validation that I've been able to give myself when I like pay attention to myself and accept who I am, you know, and grow that within me. Family, I feel like family has been a little bit of a different journey for me. It's definitely taken longer to do, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And I think that has just been learning how to build better boundaries for myself, learning to be able to recognize certain things that might be trigger, and being able to communicate to them that like, this is not going to work for me. I can't have these kind of conversations. Please stop commenting on my body, if that's the case may be. And being able to verbalize that, and then also set those boundaries of what you will and what you won't talk about. You know, there were times when I was younger where I would just let family members say what they want. And it's supposed to be in the name of jokes. But when I went back to my own place, my bedroom, or whatever the case may be, I had to deal with that hurt, not them. And so as I got older, I realized that like, I'm not going to allow people to willingly try to like create wounds that I have to later go back and take time and process. I'm just going to go ahead and communicate my boundaries clearly now. And if family truly loves you, they will understand that and respect that. And if they don't, then you create the boundary of giving yourself even more space.
Yeah.
Well, the bottom line is okay to say exactly what you need and be firm on that. And if people can't understand that and respect that, that they don't need to be in your space where they can like create that kind of harm. But that's definitely, oh, man, I'm not going to front. That is a hard one. Family's hard. Trolls and everyone else, you know, again, they can say what they want. You know, another thing with outside people that are not connected to us deeply, they don't know our journey. They don't know where we're going. They don't know where we've been. And so they can't comment in good faith about what we're doing, and I'm supposed to stop and say, oh my gosh, I gotta change my whole life now.
You're right.
I never thought of that, you know.
Oh.
So yeah.
Yeah, family is hard. And I was just recently in like an intensive therapy program where I was doing a lot of work with like my relationship with my family and just how it's affecting me. And I, for so long, just craved their approval and validation. And that included my body, because my whole life they told me that this wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And it was just, this year that it was like, oh, maybe I don't have to live my life for them anymore. Like maybe I can live my life for me, and maybe like the size or appearance of my body doesn't define me, and I can have a full ass life just the way I am. And I'm still like really new in this journey, and trolls still affect me. Sometimes I can just be quick and like not even read the whole thing. I just like delete and block and away you go.
Yeah.
But I'm still at that point where I am still very sensitive to other people's opinions of me. I think it's just like I haven't built up myself to that place yet, like what you're talking about. But hearing your journey, it helps me feel like, okay, like it might not be like this forever. Like I can keep having these conversations with myself and outwardly with you. Like I feel like this is really good for my own inner dialogue, as well as having real meaningful conversations like this. And then I can like slowly, recognize like, what do I value, what are my morals, what's meaningful to me, and then everything else can just like fall away, right? And maybe those messages won't affect me as much, or maybe the boundaries with my family won't feel as hard, or like the idea of creating distance between us because of boundaries, instead of saying like I love you and you can't do this, versus like if you loved me you would never say that in the first place. But I understand that everyone else, like even our family, has their own stuff that they probably have never dealt with, right?
Yeah, especially depending on, the age range. Like I have parents that are in their 60s, right? So, and more mid to late 60s. And when they were our age, it was a different time. We definitely weren't taking time out to process emotions, right? And so when we realize that our emotions and how we're feeling, if we're not dealing with them, we're going to be overwhelmed by them. And they literally will dictate how we walk our path in life. If you don't take time to deal with them, then you're going to just kind of be spewing kind of autopilot. And so having a little bit of grace for your family to recognize that does not mean you don't need to set the boundaries you have to set for yourself, right? It's like not interchangeable. It's like I can recognize you're probably going to keep saying things like that because that's the way you perceive the world. That's fine, your choice to do that. But I also have the choice to set this boundary and make this clear to you that I will not accept this. And that's not me just being disrespectful, right? Because that's one of the things that I deal with, is that like saying what I need feels like maybe I'm being disrespectful. And then when I feel like I'm being disrespectful, I go into this like, okay, well then I'll just be quiet. But then I'm also not dealing with what's happening on the inside.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah, you're prioritizing other people's feelings over your own.
Yeah. And so how do you get that? How do you have that balance of like, hey, I've clearly said what I needed to say, but I've also not disrespected you in saying it. And then I've also allowed you the grace that you're probably on your own journey and might need to also develop in certain ways as well. And so I need to give you the space and love to do that. You know, like
Yeah.
that really is the exchange. Is that like when people say stuff that hurts us, especially family members and stuff like that, we have to recognize that they have to go on their own journey as well. And so there's not a way for them to be perfect and change immediately, for us as well. So we have to allow that to happen, that in its own time. But we don't have to have to be taking the hits too. So
Right. It's like you can work on your journey. You can like have that space to work on yourself, and I'm not your punching bag, and you have to respect my boundaries that I'm placing for myself.
Yeah. And me placing those boundaries are not selfish or are not disrespectful. It's just what I need so that I could show up as my best self every day in the world,
Yeah, I think that's a really big thing, is like something that I thought for a long time, as well as I've heard from other people, is like, oh, boundaries are just pushing people away, or it's people will get mad at them, and like, yeah, people might get mad, but something that I've realized, it's either I need to set boundaries for myself, or I can't come over. Like we can't, like it's gonna get to that point of like, okay, like, we need to set boundaries so that we can still love each other and be together and care for each other. But if you can't like respect that, and I'm just gonna continually get hurt and have to go back and deal with all of that on my own, then maybe I'm not gonna come over for the holidays, like then I feel like it gets to that boundary, which is another boundary of, okay, that's not a safe space for me right now. It's interesting. I think that's such a tough one to navigate, family, right? As you said, like the internet trolls versus like people who do know you, or at least they know. Because I'm like, I don't want to say like they know all of you, because sometimes like I even feel like my family doesn't know a lot of things that I've kept inside, right? But like my mental health, mental illness, a lot of those things I have kept to myself, but they still know me. And like I guess my overall like energy and being, more than like some random human on the internet who just like scrolled through my profile, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
No, I think about the idea of like our parents had this whole life before they even had us, right? So it's like usually parents, so it's like we don't know everything about our parents either, right? We
That's so
don't know.
true. Right? Like I guess like they've had a whole ass life without
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
Right? It's
Yeah.
oh my god, that's so, and you're right. It's like, okay, like even if they might be causing like harm, even if it's unintentional to me, like they have a whole story that I don't know about. That like I try to empathize, like, okay, I think, they went through this, which created this perception, but I wasn't there, and it's also not my job to work through. I guess it's really their job to work through if they so choose, right?
Yeah. And when you become an adult too, that is a part of adulthood for yourself. It's just like you have to take the responsibility of your own emotions and the things that are going on with you and be able to stand up for that. And, if you think about it, a lot of the stuff that we deal with from our traumas and things that we're trying to heal from, they come from a place of when we could not stand up for ourselves because we were children, because we didn't know better. And so when you step over into adulthood, part of that is like, you have to take on that responsibility of stepping up for yourself. And that's another piece is the self-care is that you're learning about yourself with self-care, with taking that time for you, so that when trauma or potential trigger, whatever, something, you know yourself enough to step up for yourself and take care of yourself, because that is affirming to yourself that you're worth that you're valuable for that, and that you need that, and that is a loving way of treating yourself, right? And so even though we don't necessarily consciously realize that that is actually what's happening when we do those things, that is what's happening when we do those things. And so that's another reason why I say self-care is so much more important than you buying, the saying that I use is like self-care, it's not luxury, it's a necessity for the daily.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. It's not about like going to buy your favorite perfume and going to get a pedicure. It's those other things that you have to do on a daily so that when stuff hits the fan, when ish hits the fan, you can stand up for yourself and be there for yourself. Even if no one else is, you're strong enough to be there for yourself. And you're worth that. Yeah.
Wow, I think that was like a perfect note, is like being strong enough to be there for yourself, to stand up for yourself, and knowing that you are worth the practice of self-care, and you are worth, you're worthy enough to like go on this journey to protect yourself, to honor yourself, to be strong enough for yourself. Oh my gosh, I feel like I just need to like lay down I'm gonna put my phone away, and I'm just gonna like sit in all of the wisdom you just like poured all over me and just bask in it for a second, because I just appreciate that so much. And I feel like we're coming up on an hour. How has it been an hour?
I know, that's crazy. I'll be honest, like at first I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go, and I was getting kind of anxious about just having this conversation. This is one of the first, I've done chats like this before, but it wasn't for like something that like my own thing that I'm really trying to share with the world. And so there's just a lot of like, am I saying imposter syndrome? I'll be completely honest. It's a lot of that. And so it's like, moving past that. But I want to say, like, you made this really, like, this felt like just a conversation between two people just vibing, and just trying to make a real connection, and also trying to do, like, real work in the world. Like, I really love what you're trying to do with Pass the Mic. When we talked about it, I was just like, I love this idea, and so I'm just really grateful for this conversation and connecting with you. So yeah.
Thank you so much. You are so sweet. We're friends now. That's it. It's official. And yeah, I don't want our work to end here either. Like, okay, maybe this is our first chat of getting everything off the table, and then maybe we can schedule more. Like, let's talk specifically about this, or acknowledge this, or I don't know, because yeah, the work has just begun. I have lots to do. Like, I really want to use my position in the world to try to amplify the voices of people who aren't being heard, because it sucks to feel like you have something to contribute, you have something to say, but you can't. I don't even know what it is. Like, not that no one wants to listen, it's that they don't even know where you are. They don't even know that you have something to say. So it's like, we need to remove that barrier so we can get like this message across, and all these other messages that are just so vital and so important. And I am just so grateful for your time, that you just gave me an hour of your time. That is so much.
I enjoyed it.
Me too. So much.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. And again, I'm definitely open to more of these. Like I said, I think these kind of conversations need to be had, because people that are listening could take what they need and then create what's going to be empowering for them to move forward with, and so more conversations like this for sure. I'm totally open to it for sure.
I love it. Okay, so where can people find you? Like give us everything, like your Instagram, if you have a website, if you have anything else people can do.
So I mean, Grow Your Glow is like it's the hashtag, but it's going to be a website that I'm creating. I'm working on that now. But the main place is come on Instagram at Adrienne Bennett. That's me, and you'll get a lot of content that I share. Like, I focus on self-care for fat women. I focus on a lot of affirmations. I'm really about us going and exploring our own self-worth and growing that and making ourselves the priority and learning what we need to do to accept ourselves as we are today, no matter our size. So yeah, at Adrienne Bennett on Instagram is the main place, and you'll see from there, you'll get links to my YouTube, my TikTok, and various other places like that. And I definitely hope to be doing more of like podcasting and stuff like that. I'm just trying to create, there's so many ways to create content.
There's so many, it's so overwhelming. I find it so overwhelming because I'm like, okay, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. Do I try to go on Twitter more? Like Facebook, I just, but you know, I'm just, there's so many avenues to get the message out, and let's do it all. Let's do it all.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And again, like I said before, I really want to say thank you for just creating this space for people to come on here and have these kind of conversations. And I look forward to, you know, this continuing on. So I followed so many people you posted, like the list of people you posted. I ended up going and following all of them, and now I'm getting like so much inspiration from them. So
Isn't it amazing? It's ridiculous.
I didn't know
like
these people existed.
this is the point, right? That's the thing. Like even I follow like all of them, and they do not show up on my feed because guess who does? The thin white women. And so now I'm trying to like mute the people on top, like mute them all so I can actually see the people that I want to follow. And I think we all just need to do that and really like unfollow everyone that does not bring you joy, so our feeds can reflect our values and what we really want to see. So I love that you're contributing to this space, and once again, so grateful for you. And wait, I'm gonna end the recording, and then before we hang up, just in case I don't want to lose any of this, this is just too precious. Be weird.